FCMD of Manitoba. We would like to direct this especially to the Vice Presidency, Our Excellency. The state wants to appreciate you for appointing one of our own, our son, Shegun Ochuko Obayendo, as your technical advisor on transportation, logistics, and innovation. Thank you very, very much, sir. We shall count the number of people who have given you that applause so that many more appointments from Delta will follow in your office. Thank you, sir. So let me bring you, yes now, Joyce. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Henry. Please permit me, I will be very biased right now. Before I bring our doyen, who is our keynote speaker, I would like to specially recognize some trailblazing women that I see with my eye. Dr. Meoji, the Group Managing Director of Zenith Bank, you're welcome, ma'am. Sitting very close to her is the Managing Director of FCMB. I see her, Mrs. Yemisi Edung, welcome. Representing the Managing Director of Fidelity Bank, Dr. Nneka Onyalipe, is the Executive Director South. Please welcome Mrs. Pamela Shodipo as you're sitting here. It is my joy to bring up our keynote speaker at the Delta State Economic Investment Summit 2026, the 7th Director General of the World Trade Organization, the first African and the first woman to hold this office in the entire history of the WTO, previously served 2 terms as the Nigeria's Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister for the Economy, served as Managing Director of the World Bank. She led negotiations that wiped out $18 billion of Nigeria's debt and an overall external debt reduction of over $30 billion. She's recognized as one of the most influential humans alive today. She was nicknamed Okonjo Wahala because she brought Wahala to inefficiency in the economy. She brought Wahala to corruption. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, this global institution in human form, role model to men and women across the globe. She was born right here in Ogwashuku, and she has not forgotten her roots. She's not here as a visiting dignitary. She is home as a daughter of the soil. Please join me as I receive my role model, your role model, the Director General of the World Trade Organization, our keynote speaker today, Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, GCON. The Emperor, the Conqueror, the Champion, the Lion is here.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that wonderful introduction and welcome, much more than I deserve. I just want to alert you that as the keynote speaker, my speech is 20 minutes. So you'll be ready. I was given that time. Your Excellency, Mr. Vice President, Senator Kashim Shettima, GCON, thank you for being here. For the Secretary to the State Government, the Chairman of the occasion, Engineer Austin Avuru, very nice of you to do this. And our Royal Fathers, very nice to see all of you. I think just give me half a minute to recognize one special Royal Father, who is my own younger brother, His Majesty, the Obi of Ogwashuku, Obi Ifechukwude Chukwuka Okonjo, and his Chief of Staff, my younger brother, Prince Onyema Okonjo. They came here to accompany me. Please give them a round of applause. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, excellencies, it's always a joy to be back home in Delta State. And I brought with me one other honored Deltan. His name is Dr. Bright Okogu from Abraka, the former Director General of the Budget of the Federation, who is now the Chief of Staff of the WTO. I'm really delighted to have this opportunity to contribute to this conversation about realizing the development ambitions of Deltans. But as I rejoice with you, Your Excellency, I have to be very careful because you said I'm an export. So I've been exported to the WTO, but I was exported to Abia State first. And I have to acknowledge my husbands, because when they hear you, maybe Governor Alex Oti will lock me out of Abia State, and I won't be able to go home. So I also want to salute my husbands in Abia State. I thank His Excellency the Governor of Delta State and the organizers of this summit for this invitation. I want to congratulate you, Excellency, on the development strides that you have been taking. He and I are often in touch. He's always WhatsApping me with one thing or the other. And the reason I came is because you take action. The fund you just announced of $100 million to de-risk investment is exactly the kind of things that we need. I also want to salute the investor, the development partners, captains of industry that are here, the entrepreneurs, the women entrepreneurs in particular, and the youth. And to thank the investors, especially the ambassador of Brazil and the delegation from Brazil, Malaysia, China, and others. What I'm going to do today in this keynote speech, which I've entitled "The State as Harnessing Our Strengths and Unlocking Our Potentials for Economic Development," what I want to do is quickly look at the state of the world economy and global trade, not just because I'm DG of the WTO, but because it is the broadest context within which Delta State will pursue its goals. You all know that these are difficult times for the world and for global trade. On a daily basis, as far as trade is concerned, I face challenges on what is happening with global trade rules. The rules-based system that has framed global commerce for the past 80 years, since the end of the Second World War, is today under unprecedented strain. Unilateral tariff actions and rising geopolitical tensions have unsettled the economic environment within which countries and companies must make plans. Rapid technological change and climate shocks are further sources of pressure. And yet, despite all of these disruptions, trade and the trading system have shown remarkable resilience, contributing to the wider resilience of the global economy. The value of global goods and services trade last year was a record $34.65 trillion. In volume terms, world merchandise trade grew by 4.6% in 2025, with surging demand for AI-related goods more than compensating for weaknesses linked to tariff increases and trade policy uncertainty. African merchandise export volumes grew by 10.3%, driven by minerals, metals, fuels, and agricultural products like cocoa. Global services trade grew by 5.3% and by nearly 6% for digitally delivered services trade. The takeaway from all of these numbers is that within the global disruption, there is a stable core, and that despite all the tough headlines that you keep seeing, there are opportunities for Delta State, for Nigeria, and for Africa elsewhere. In recent years, particularly since structural and human endowments, we've heard about them: abundant natural gas, a coastline with seaports at Warri, Sapele, Bruto, and Escravos, the Itape Ajiokuta Warri rail line, the fertile land of Delta State, solid minerals, 49 tertiary institutions producing young people where they grew up. On the financial front, the state also has some fiscal space. Budget's 2025 State of States report ranks Delta 6th of 35 states in overall fiscal performance and second in debt sustainability. I was very happy about that. And when I heard one of the speakers say, "You're not going to borrow from anyone dead or alive," I was smiling. Keep the fiscal prudence, because without it, you're not going to be able to build the Delta State we want. If you have to deploy resources, you have to deploy them in a manner that makes the state productive, not wasted. The 2026 proposed budget of 1.664 trillion naira prioritizes increased capital expenditures as part of the efforts to move Delta onto a higher growth path. A stable macroeconomic environment at the federal level on exchange rate management, bringing down inflationary pressures, would improve states' prospects for success. And we have heard the Minister of Finance and the central bank governor, I was with him a few days ago, talk about the progress that is being made, and that's moving in the right direction. But the fact is that endowments alone do not add value. Budgetary allocations alone do not lead to new roads, to good maintenance. We lack a maintenance culture in the country. I have to say that I'm Nigerian, and I was telling Engineer Austin Avuru, thanking him for mentioning maintenance. We need that. We need better ports and digital infrastructure and lower trade costs. Execution is what matters. And successful execution requires focus. It requires prioritization. So let me touch on a few priority areas for focused investment. We've listened to Delta State, and the one or two things I have to say seem to coincide. The Delta State's government focus on developing the special economic zones makes sense. In fact, a new report by the World Bank on industrial policy specifically identifies special economic zones as one of the best available tools for governments with limited fiscal space and bandwidth and relatively small local markets. Governments can improve infrastructure and regulatory frameworks for a specific location, which in turn allows for the pooling of labor, inputs, and ideas. With Delta State's gas assets that we've heard about, and working with the federal government, this is key, working with the federal government, you have an important ingredient for the essential infrastructure. Because elements of a successful industrial park include 24/7 infrastructure, meaning electricity, roads, rail, water, and IT connectivity, together with on-site support for licensing and other aspects of regulatory compliance, you need the federal government's full support for what you're doing. I've not had the chance to visit the Delta Special Economic Zones in Kwale and Koko, but I know they have been under consideration for years, and we saw in the movie that something is happening. But I also would encourage you to visit a couple of other special economic zones around us. I visited the Lekki Free Zone just 2 days ago, and the deep sea port. And what is happening there, it started while I was Minister of Finance, and what is happening there is worth seeing. Phase by phase, they are working and they are developing the area. There are 5,000 people employed there now. I also think that the Glo-Jigbe Special Economic Zone in the Republic of Benin is well worth a visit. I was there, and what struck me was a large number of young men and women, graduates and people coming out of secondary school who were employed in the various industries on site. The park runs like clockwork, meaning everything works, everything is on site. They don't need to go anywhere to do anything. And that is the kind of special economic zone that we would like to see. I don't know if Afrexim Bank is here or Arise, some of the investors there, but I think that what I saw them doing there is good testimony to what can be done elsewhere and done here, right here in Delta State. In tandem with the development of the special economic zone, another priority would be to identify a small number of value chains. Again, it was said at the beginning, areas where you have strong comparative advantage, and they are there. We've talked about agro-allied processing, but there you have listed a number of crops. Which 2 or 3 are you going to prioritize? That's my question to you. Because if we go into so many, We Nigeria optimists. We have the confluence of three windows of opportunity: the global push for supply diversification, the African continental integration, and within Nigeria, the recognition that economic transformation will not come from Abuja alone. The Minister of Finance talked about that. That sub-national governments will have to step up, as you are doing, Excellency, to create jobs, attract investment, and provide public goods. The prize-winning Delta author Ben Okri famously wrote, and I quote, "Don't neglect the gold in your own backyard," unquote. The true wealth of Delta State has never just been our oil and gas, it's our people. This summit is about taking care of the gold in our backyard, of starting the years of hard work needed to deliver on our people's hopes and aspirations for better lives, on demonstrating that Delta can and will compete for investment and become the industrial hub for Nigeria that I want it to be. Delta can and will transform itself from a resource-rich state to a diversified, inclusive, and resilient sub-national economy. Excellency, dear Governor, Mr. Vice President, my fellow Deltans, I just want to wish all of us perseverance and success. Thank you.
We should be rising to our feet to salute this titan of the economy and development, not only Nigeria. And please, whilst you're standing, can you bring the roof down with your applause for this diminutive yet powerful African representation? Thank you very much. Our own sister, two-time minister. You know, when you hear Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala speak, you wonder whether it's the same person who authored the book titled Reforming the Unreformable. And that was her opinion about Nigeria and her journey through the years of trying to pioneer and champion reforms in this country. Ladies and gentlemen, the story has been made clear. I only wish she'll be here tomorrow when the sessions and the panel start to shed more light on the very succinct message she has delivered to us. I'm glad that our governor listened with rapt attention, and I'm sure that the message that you have left with us will not go unheralded. Thank you very much, ma'am. In the meantime, your pen has just dropped there, ma'am. So, that is a World Trade Organization biro. So we keep moving on. There is so much to do, too many people wanting to be recognized, as indeed we should. And now, I don't know where I have put the papers, but as I find them, we shall do them. The Director General of the Braced Commission, Ambassador Joe Keshi, is here. We want to salute Dr. Ebiere Jasper Eradiri, President, AIC Africa, the Association for SMEs, is also here. I have Executive Director, Business Development, Nexim Bank, Honorable Stella Okotete here, our own daughter as well. Thank you all for being here. We will now take another message from a man whose role here is to ignite our minds and set the intellectual tone. Well, he's not setting it anymore. That's past. That tone has been more than set. He will join it and fine-tune it, because we want to welcome this African legal luminary, a passionate Pan-Africanist, and our distinguished, eloquent guest speaker. We know his name, but he's a man who's known for telling us that Africa is moving in reverse gear and that we have remained beggars at foreign tables. The same speaker has told us that Africa is guilty of operating with inherited foreign institutions. He tells us that Africa's worst enemies are within, referring to our collaborators. But most of all, the most provocative one is where he tells us that there is no shortage of idiots in Africa. Professor Patrick Lumumba, I want to tell you there is no idiots in Delta State. Welcome to the microphone. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Let me stand on the protocols already established, but it would be proper to recognize His Excellency, the Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Senator Kashim Shettima. It is also proper to recognize the Governor of Delta State, all the governors here present, all cabinet ministers here present, and of course the traditional rulers and the keynote speaker, Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala. In a proper setting, there should be no other speech after the keynote speech. But because I find myself in this space, I will say only the following things, then I resume my seat. Number one, that I thought about the subject that I was told to speak about, and I've written a full-blooded paper which will be availed to you. Number two, that in many ways the speakers who have come before me have identified the critical issues that are relevant to the development of the Delta State. However, it is important to point out a number of issues that I consider critical when I look at the continent of Africa and our inclination to gloss over certain critical things. Many times when we talk about Africa, and I say so because Delta State is a state within the Federal Republic of Nigeria, which is one of the 54 African states. We are quick to say that we are 1.4 billion. That is all very well. But the question that we must ask ourselves is, what are we doing about the 1.4 billion? As I speak to you now, I invite you to see what is happening in Morocco and the young men and women who are running away and dying trying to go to Europe, which tells us this: there is a lot to be done in the continent. And that is what gladdens my heart, that in your own small way here in Delta, recognizing as you do that Nigeria must be built state by state, you are beginning to recognize the areas that ought to receive attention. You are recognizing that oil must be utilized. And you, Mr. Governor, did tell us that you are aware of what the Norwegians have done, that they now have a sovereign fund of nearly 3 billion or 3 trillion United States dollars. The question that you must therefore ask yourself, will you do that here in the Delta State? We have been told that when we talk about oil in Nigeria, you are the oil state in Nigeria. The question is, are you using the oil resources and comparing yourselves not with other African countries? It is the Ugandan president who said, and I've always agreed with him, that there is the tendency in Africa to compare ourselves as dwarfs compare amongst themselves who is the taller one. Because at the end of the day, they are all dwarfs, even if one is an inch taller than the other. I want you in Delta to compare yourselves with others. Your own country or your own state has an economy larger than over 20 African countries, a GDP larger than 20 African states. The question is, with all the resources that we have, whether we are talking about agriculture, whether we are talking about minerals, whether we are talking about oil, whether we are talking about pharmaceutical sectors, whether we are talking about the blue economy, what are we doing that is in keeping with the demands of the 21st century? The world now talks about the fourth and fifth industrial revolution. The world now talks about artificial intelligence. But I always ask my fellow Africans who are quick to talk about artificial intelligence, who controls the artificial intelligence that we consume in the continent of Africa? It is not us. It could be withdrawn in the twinkling of an eye, and we go back to the dark ages. So the question is, as you are here in Delta, having identified the critical areas and the strengths that you have as a people, what will we do? The keynote speakers reminded us of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. And you know, when I look at the Continental Free Trade Area, and I look at the many writings about the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, it is not Africans who are writing. It is others. It is the Chinese. It is the Europeans. So that if you wanted an expert on Africa Continental Free Trade Area, you don't look to Africa. And that is tragic, Honorable Governor. It is equally tragic that in our interpretation and understanding of who an investor is in the continent of Africa, we still don't think that fellow Africans are investors. We think, and allow me to be blunt, that our investors must be Malaysians. We think that our investors must be Brazilians. We think that our investors must be Chinese. That is not the case. And I'm saying this because in the year 2018, I and others started something called the Pan-African Investment Movement. We have now visited 6 countries, and we have told heads of state that even Africans with $100,000 each, putting the money together, are investors. When a few Africans heard I was coming here from as far as Trinidad and Tobago, they asked me, but why were we not invited? I said, next time. Because next time, Honorable Governor, I want to see Kenyans here. I want to see Ghanaians here. I want to see Sudanese here. I want to see Ethiopians here. I want to see Moroccans here. I want to see Egyptians here, because Africans must begin to believe that they have both the intellectual and financial wherewithal to participate in the development of their continent. Because it is only when we do so that our friends of goodwill from Brazil, our friends of goodwill from China, our friends of goodwill from Europe, our friends of goodwill from the United States of America will begin to believe that the relationship between us and them is symbiotic rather than parasitic. And I'm submitting to us that many times what we call development is not development, is parasitism. And I am urging you, my brother, as you serve as the governor of Delta, you are doing a good job, but that job can be better. That job can be an African job. That job can give meaning to Africa Continental Free Trade Area. That job can have meaning to Africa Agenda 2063, but a number of critical issues must also be done by the Nigerian federal government. We must allow people to move freely within the continent. Your Excellency, the Vice President, Nigeria is the biggest economy in real terms in sub-Saharan Africa. I look forward to the day when, if I'm an investor in Delta, I want to invest in the blue economy, I want to invest in any area, I can take my plane from Addis Ababa in Ethiopia and arrive here in Asaba without a landing and exit card. I look forward to that day. I look forward to the day when there will be no visa for an African coming to this country. Because when you are big, the expectations from you are big. When we talk about Europe now, it is possible to move from Bratislava in Slovakia to Lisbon in Portugal using one currency. But here I move from Nigeria, then there is the CD. Then I move from there, then there is the dollar. We cannot run an economy where we are so fragmented. And God has placed you, because I'm told you are a godly man, in a unique position. You are entitled to celebrate what is happening here in Delta. But it must be a contagious positive thing. You must contaminate Anambra that they do the same thing. You must contaminate other neighbors, and ultimately you must contaminate the federal government. And it is proper that you invited His Excellency the Vice President so that this message will go to Abuja, and that your example will be used as an example that will be replicated across the Federal Republic of Nigeria and ultimately across the continent of Africa. You know, Your Excellency, as I said at the beginning, when the keynote speaker has spoken, wisdom only demands one thing, that I conclude. And this is how I conclude. I conclude by congratulating the government of Delta. I congratulate the government of Delta by recognizing that they have strengths. But I'm urging you going forward, ask yourself, how are you using your young population who are graduating from the universities? What skills are they receiving? I'm asking, how are you using your academics from the universities? What is the budget that you have set apart for research and development so that your academics are not only individuals who preside over graduation ceremonies, but they are producing thoughts and they are engaged in research which is informing agriculture, which is informing energy, which is informing all the critical areas. And as my good friend Tony Elumelu said, you can talk development all you want, but if you don't have energy, you are going nowhere. You are going nowhere, because how are you going to compete with the Chinese? Let me give you an example, then I sit down. Nigeria generates no more than 5,000 megawatts of electricity. You lose a bit of it in distribution. China generates 3 million megawatts of electricity, which means that the seats we are sitting on, even if you wanted to produce them here in the Delta, people would still buy them from China because they are cheaper. I'm therefore suggesting that energy should be one of the critical areas in which you focus. And we now know that gas can be used in that area. We now know that diesel can be used in that area. And this is a good journey. And as one of your fellow Nigerians once said, and this is not gender insensitive, that a chick that will grow into a cock is seen on the day that it hatches. Even a hen that will grow into a chick that will grow into a hen is seen on the day it hatches. Delta looks good. Make it good. Allow it to remain good. Think beyond yourself in the knowledge that you are not successful until your successor succeeds. God bless.
Where is the music? Where is the music? Okay. As our people they talk for pidgin English, they go say Professor Lumumba don't scatter table. Everyone don't scatter everywhere. But you know, Professor, we thank you very much. You have told us a few things, and clearly in your delivery, you've made it very clear that you're a very wise man. Because even as you spoke about all of the African countries that you'd like to see in Delta, you cleverly avoided South Africa. I don't know why. I don't know why, but we shall take you up on that after now. Yeah? And you have come here to preach the gospel of contamination. You look at our handsome, active governor, you call him a parasite. He should go and contaminate Anambra, the solutions governor. In fact, before he gets to Governor Soludo, he has to cross the vice president and corrupt him or the other, or contaminate him. But anyway, your message is clear. You have asked our governor to keep Delta good, keep it moving forward. But I'll say, paraphrasing from the keynote speaker's address, that all you're saying is, I think our governor has to consider a new campaign, which is Blue Delta, in support of the blue marine that we're trying to push forward. And I know that our governor, the young elder, Sheriff Oborewori, Justice of the Peace, before long, you will see that he will launch the Blue Delta initiative. And Delta will become the undisputable food basket, not only of the Niger Delta, but for all of Africa. That $1 billion deficit in importation of fish alone, this governor is hungry and ready to take of the good that the governor will do. We ask you to encourage him with a hearty applause. Let me quickly salute those who would support our governor by saying that we have here Mr. Frank Okafor, my own brother, Senior Project Manager, Green and Digital Economy of the European Union Delegation to Nigeria and the ECOWAS. He's representing the European Union Ambassador to Nigeria and the ECOWAS. He's representing the European Union Ambassador.
It's quite a shock, Your Excellency. I thought this was going to be one free lunch I'm going to have. Just come, listen to the Vice President, listen to you, listen. Traffic at Onitsha on a Monday. The Monday sit at home is over. The Monday sit at home is over.